Hi guys, today I just wanted to jump on camera because of the time of year that it is. I didn't have time to prepare any sort of like notes to read from, so this may feel a little bit more disorganized than usual. Normally I do try and write some notes so that I keep on topic and there's not a lot of like weird pauses that I need to edit out and things like that. So this will be a little bit unscripted. So today what I want to talk about is Lent, and I just want to say a disclaimer here that my background is a non-practicing Protestant. My dad is a Catholic, non-practicing Catholic, and my mum is a non-practicing Protestant, and so attending church or doing anything like that, as I've said previously, was basically a births, deaths and marriages thing, and not always for those things either. So I basically don't have that background knowledge of Christianity that a lot of people raised in those like religious traditions do. I was introduced to the idea or the concept of Lent through media rather than knowing anybody personally that actually practiced it. So basically when I was old enough to start reading books, and like you come across the concept in a book, and therefore you say, well, what is Lent, and that sort of thing. So that's how I basically learnt what Lent actually was. So in a way, and this is something that I have tossed up myself, because I have been thinking about this for a little while now. Is it appropriation for me to be taking the concept of Lent and utilizing it in a non-Christian like tradition, basically? So at the moment the path that I feel that I'm on is more of an eclectic path, and so I know that eclectic practitioners normally sort of like they choose what works for them, but they will pick from different traditions and they will have their own tradition that does work for them. The fact that the religious tradition that I am borrowing from is one that is quite dominant and it is very pervasive, does that then have the same cultural appropriation context that when we talk about cultural appropriation, we're normally talking about people adopting things from like cultures that are rather like oppressed or minority or that sort of thing. So I have been pondering about all of that in the background, and whether is it appropriate for me to adopt the idea of Lent and to maybe use it in a way that is slightly different, and like B, is it something that I do want to look at doing in the future. Then there's also the fact that, so at the moment we are in April in 2019 and Easter is pretty much upon us, and that's to say that the Western calendar says that it is Easter coming up very shortly, and everything, you hear everything in Australia, everyone is preparing for Easter, we get holidays for Easter, you can see all the Easter decorations and chocolate and everything in the stores. However, from if you're looking from a nature perspective, or if you are adopting the Southern Hemisphere wheel of the year, we're actually, we're not anywhere near Easter time. We're completely the opposite. We're going into autumn. We should be, pulling out the pumpkins and, that sort of thing. We're approaching May and Samhain, and the particular weekend that Easter falls on this year is actually nothing really to us in a like wheel of the year perspective. So there is also that that it feels very like a little bit weird that there is such a Easter like vibe going on, obviously in terms of what everyone is saying and the holidays and the break and everything. However, that is not matching up with the seasons. So the other question I had for myself was, do I harness the fact that everyone is focused on this Easter energy in the Southern Hemisphere, and, you know, like preparing in that way and everything, and, you know, doing Lent at this particular time, even though it is not necessarily the time for it. It is, you know, like normally we would start the practice, I believe, either late July or August. I'm not sure what the dates are. The reason why I guess I was thinking about the concept of Lent, and you know, is it something that maybe I want to sort of adopt into a practice, and, you know, maybe it's something that I need to look at in a more broad perspective, which is more about the pause or the rest, giving yourself space, and that sort of thing. So what I suppose has made me start thinking about that is so in a previous depth year video, I touched on the fact that I've noticed I go through some cycles, and I'm really studying this in my own life to see, you know, if they're recurring year on year. But in the transitional period between summer and autumn, I always go through a phase where, you know, I'm looking at, you know, like my clothing, what I'm wearing. I go through this intense like appearance and clothing and how I want to present myself phase. And I also I go through this phase of how I'm eating. At this particular year, I was eating like quite badly. I was eating like basically snacking on chocolate every day, and doing like a ton of other things that were really like I was really noticing that I was actually putting on weight and things like that. So what I've decided to do, and I'm over halfway at the moment as this is filming, is basically do a dietary reset where I just stop eating certain things for a month, and I've cut out a lot of things. So you know, no sugars, no grains, very, very minimal dairy, no like soy and legumes. There's a lot of stuff, and that's really not the purpose of this video. But in doing that, I've just been thinking of the idea of giving myself space to consider, you know, what it is that I do want to be doing. You know, like in this, it's in terms of like the way that I want to be eating. You know, like how much you know, sugar do I bring back in once this, you know, 30-day pause, you know, ends. Like, you know, do I want to be eating a lot of dairy? Like all of that sort of thing. So I suppose that's really what's got me thinking about it. Now, of course, in the Western calendar, you know, it is theoretically Lent at the moment. So, you know, do I harness that, the fact that there is a lot of energy out there on, you know, because people are doing Lent, you know, do I sort of do that at this time as I'm going into the dark half of the year, and also with Samhain approaching and the idea of getting rid of things that no longer serve and all of that sort of thing? Or do I do it towards spring? It was funny actually that it was in watching, I think it's called Tales of the Green Valley. So it's a series where people try and live, I think it was 16th or 17th century farm life somewhere in Wales, I believe. And so they go through the agricultural year, and they discuss, you know, they're eating as per the calendar, and they're doing tasks that pop up depending on what time of the year it is. And it was interesting, and I suppose the first time that I've really thought about it in depth, that really the leanest time for people living at that time was actually the period between the end of winter and the beginning of spring, because and especially I suppose in northern hemisphere, you know, you've probably had snow or like really cold weather, so no growing possible, and you are, you know, you're before you get all of the dairy, you are, you know, before you get all of the like the baby animals being born, and so you're really stretching out the stores that you've put away over the like coming into autumn, winter, so the winter just gone. So Lent really, I suppose, at that time of the year is quite not appropriate, but I suppose it has that feel of, you know, it is a lean time anyway, so having that pause and having like that reason to be doing it, you know, for like a spiritual reason, for it, like for a greater reason, I suppose felt really comforting and really, I guess, important as well. So yeah, I found that I didn't know any of that before, so I thought that was really interesting. And I suppose this is where the different climates and everything come into play. And also in modern society, you know, we have food year round. We import food that we don't have growing here or in season. There's no frost. People grow things in greenhouses. There's none of that leanness or anything built into any part of the year. And, you know, is that to our detriment that as humans we don't ever have a bit of a pause? We don't ever have a time where we sort of take a break, and I suppose that comes with the idea of the religious fast, or, you know, just basically taking a pause. And I know that in a lot of traditions they do have like a religious fast, and I think that's something that, and so obviously if you're not in a particular religious tradition, you're never getting to do that. And I guess it's an excellent reminder that, like, in times of abundance, it's something to be really grateful for. So of course, I think it goes almost without saying that I'm, I guess, lucky to be even contemplating all of this stuff. In some parts of the world, you know, there is not enough to eat, and they are living lean for the entire year. So I do recognize the just how lucky I am to be in the position that I'm in. So what I'll be doing is I will be finishing off this dietary reset, and I didn't start it officially on like the Ash Wednesday, as I wasn't really considering it in that perspective at the time. So what I will be doing is finishing off the dietary reset at the end of April, and then slowly considering what it is that I want to reintroduce into my diet, and sort of in what sort of quantities, just, you know, and listening to my body to make sure that, you know, like, do I react to things because I've had that pause from certain food groups for like a certain amount of time? You know, does my body actually react to them because they have had that break and that time to, I guess, step away from things that maybe, you know, it's not obviously going to cause a huge reaction, but, you know, maybe I get an upset stomach a little bit, or, you know, maybe I just don't feel so well after eating something. So it's even like minimal things like that that I'm really interested to record and find out, you know, like how they kind of like affect me. And so yes, I will be going through this like calendar Easter without eating chocolate, which I don't really see as a huge negative actually. And, you know, I have so much other nice food that I can be eating this time as well. So what I think I might do also is I might have a think about whether, you know, I want to do a yearly reset at some point, and it's not always going to be related to food. Maybe it's, you know, like stopping a habit that I find is unhelpful, or something like that. So I don't always necessarily think it needs to be linked to food. At this particular time, yes, it is. But, you know, maybe it'll be linked to something else. Like it could be linked to the consumption of or the time spent on like screens on computers, especially for me, or, you know, whatever it is that I feel, you know, maybe it's not serving, or maybe I need a break from it to consider, you know, how it is I want to integrate it back into my life, rather than it be this unconscious habit that I've kind of picked up. So I think that's how I want to be utilizing Lent, and, you know, as I guess a someone who's more on the pagan path, you know, I'm definitely going to have people with some strong opinions on that. But I think that eventually you do need to have an opinion on something. This is just something that I have been considering. I don't really see any negatives to it. I'm not going to treat it as an exercise of deprivation, of you know, self-flagellation or anything. It is going to be very much about giving myself the space, giving myself like time to breathe and time to just you know, take a step back. So I'd really like to look at it in that light, as opposed to the depriving myself, you know, and you know, beating up on myself basically for that particular time period. So what I will be doing is I will be having a look at the southern hemisphere, end of winter, beginning of springtime, and consider whether it's appropriate to be doing it at that particular time. But everything so far, I guess the energies around me and, you know, my own particular cycles always tell me at this time of year, for some reason, I don't know if it's because it's a transitional, you know, summer into autumn, or, you know, if the same thing is going to happen winter into spring, but it's definitely that transitional energy, I think, that causes me to like rethink these things and really focus on them, and rather than start obsessing about particular plans. So for example, on a like in a food context, it's all those dietary plans and the, you know, the ways of eating, the meal plans thing. So I tend to want to steer towards some particular program or like challenge or a whatever, in order to deal with whatever is coming up. So I think, you know, what might be more helpful is if I consider taking a step back from whatever it is, rather than sitting there obsessively, getting into this whirlwind of looking at all the ways that people are doing it and everything, and just taking my own step back and saying, okay, less of this or nothing of this for a while and see how I go. So I think I'll leave it there. This is very much a work in progress, and I guess just some beginning reflections on this particular topic, and whether this is something that I adopt into my own practice. I know that this video hasn't been as logically presented as a lot of my other ones. As I said, I didn't have any notes on this one. I just knew I wanted to get on camera and talk to you about it. And I suppose partly because it is such a relevant time. It is, you know, almost Easter for everyone that celebrates Easter at this particular time. And if you are celebrating that, blessed Astara, and I will see you in another video.